Welcome back to Forward Progress, part of the Hammer Betting Network. I'm your host, Jason Cooper, alongside Greg Tompsett, host of the Cover One podcast. You can check out Greg on X at Greg Tompsett. Today, we'll be covering everything you need to know about the Buffalo Bills in 2024. Before we get started, quickly comment below how many wins you expect the Bills to get this year. Let's jump right into it, Greg. Before we look forward, we must look back. Last season, the Bills were 11-6. Once again, they lose to the Chiefs in the playoffs for the third time in 4 years. Give me one word or phrase to describe the 2023 Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I think it's got to be unfortunate, disappointing. I think we're in a great position where I can be disappointed by, our fourth straight division title, fourth straight season with a playoff win. Being in that kind of position to be disappointed is great considering what the past was, but it's still disappointing and frustrating, and they have to find a way to break through.
Yeah, fair enough here. They really have to find a way to break through. And I think it's been 6 seasons so far. We're getting into the 7th season of the duo of Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. They joined the Bills back in 2017, kind of as a tandem. And since they've come in, they really have been unable to get over that hump in the playoffs. That is, I guess, the Kansas City Chiefs. Despite, I think they've done a pretty good job bringing in some talent. I'm curious to know how hot you feel like the seat is for Sean McDermott and how hot you feel like the seat is for Brandon Beane. And tell me a little bit about how you feel they've performed so far over the last 6 seasons.
So I think the fact that you're even asking that question is a really interesting look into how we approach things nowadays and what's become this kind of ring culture. Sean McDermott's the winningest coach in Buffalo Bills franchise history. He has a better win percentage than Marv Levy, who went to 4 Super Bowls. He's the winningest coach in NFL history. Brandon Beane drafted the greatest player or I guess the best player. Bruce Smith was a greater player than Josh Allen, but the best player in Bills history. They've put together a team that's made the playoffs 5 out of the 6 years after being in a 17-year playoff drought. They were the longest playoff drought in all of professional sports, all 4 sports. They now have made the playoffs 5 of those 6 years. They've won 4 straight division championships, 4 straight double-digit win seasons, 4 straight playoff wins in seasons with a playoff win. The Chiefs are the only other team to do that. They're the only 2 teams in football to do that. So it's really important to keep that context that, yes, at some point is there a moment you get to where, hey, it's just not enough. You have to find a way to finally win a championship. Sure. But, people think of times like Andy Reid ran out that time in Philadelphia before he went to Kansas City. Well, what they remember are the 4 straight NFC championship games, not the fact that he went 6-10 and 4-12 his last 2 seasons and then got fired and went to Kansas City. So when Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott go 6-10 and 4-12, or I guess 6-11, 4-13, and now today's new NFL, then I think it'll be there. So, the seat would get hot for me if you have a healthy Josh Allen season and you miss the playoffs. That's a hot seat for me. If you have, I guess, if there's like an embarrassing first round exit, maybe the next season the seat gets hot. But if you're winning division championships every year, winning playoff games, getting into there, the reason it's not hot is they're making the owner a ton of money. He's not going to fire them.
Fair enough. Just out of curiosity, what kind of grade, if you were to have to grade their last 6 seasons, what grade would you give them? The both of them, I guess.
I think a B+. I mean, you've made a incredibly talented roster. Brandon Beane just kind of had to take your medicine off season here, where we had to release a lot of older, expensive veterans to kind of clean the slate. Had a huge cachet of draft picks to bring in a big draft class this year. Sean McDermott again has really rebuilt the culture of the organization and set everything there. He talks about, trust the process and all the cheesy cliches that he likes. I think that neither of them are perfect. Both have made mistakes. Both have things they could do better, but there's way, way more good than bad. So I'll go B+.
Before we get into the next part of the episode, just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors over at Pinnacle. Pinnacle is the world's sharpest sportsbook, offering competitive odds for 25 years. If you're looking to bet on the NFL, NBA, NCAA football, or any sport for that matter, you should have Pinnacle as one of your available outs. Bet smart, bet Pinnacle. Must be 19 plus, and please play responsibly.
Yeah, exactly. And it feels like this kind of stuff gets amplified nowadays, especially because of the world that we live in with results of just having X and Twitter and just such a media hungry and very hungry culture where we just want to get our opinions out there. So it's usually like, if you're not winning, then get out. But I think I agree with you here in how Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, have done a great job in kind of rebuilding the Buffalo Bills. Sticking with Sean McDermott, I want to touch a little bit on the Buffalo Bills defense. He promoted Bobby Babich to defensive coordinator. It sounds like maybe he will be taking over the play calling duties from Sean McDermott. We don't really know just yet. But just looking at the Bills last year, a little unlucky on defense, ranked 22nd in adjusted games lost on defense. Despite that, they were relatively an above average defense in terms of EPA per play and DVOA, ranking 11th and 12th respectively. Tell us a little bit more about the new defensive coordinator, Bobby Babich. Who will be calling plays in 2024, and if you think this defense might look differently stylistically in 2024.
So Bobby Babich has been a guy who's come up with the organization for 7 years now. He was the safety coach during multiple of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer's all-pro seasons. He switched to linebacker, which led to Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano's best seasons. He then now was promoted to defensive coordinator. A very highly regarded up-and-coming defensive mind in the league, and someone who was, if the Bills didn't pick him here, he actually had interviews with Miami and Washington, I think, for their defensive coordinator spot. So I think if he didn't get the spot here in Buffalo, it was just a matter of time before he would have been in the league here. He's a very aggressive coach, seems to be more open to diverse coverage schemes. Sean McDermott's been very much a zone coverage guy, no big plays, keep the bubble, keep everything in front of you, rally and tackle, all those kind of things. I don't think that Babich is going to get away from that, but I do think he's more open to mixing in more man, more combination coverage schemes to be able to give the team some different cards to play as they go. They've been very coy this offseason on who's going to be calling plays, but all of the comments, especially the ones that Babich has made the last couple of days in their press conferences, he's talked about how, no one can really know if they're ready for this until they're there, but I'm as prepared as any person possibly could be in order to call plays. McDermott has continued to reiterate that he's not ready to make that decision. He's not going to do it until well into training camp, but they've made all their comments with the idea that the plan is for Babich to do that, and he would need to show that he's not ready in order for McDermott to keep it versus the other way around. Like, I think their plan is for him to take it, and I plan on him to be a little bit more aggressive, although McDermott was more aggressive last year than Leslie Frazier. Like you said, the injuries really hit, especially when you talk about losing players like losing Trey White, losing Matt Milano, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, like really critical cornerstone players on that defense who had been there for the whole 6-year run. Losing that is much different than just a regular starter here and there. They got down to where they were at linebacker 5 and 6 in the playoff game, and people, rightfully, AJ Klein didn't do a great job covering Travis Kelce in the playoff game, but I don't know how many teams linebacker 6 could come off the couch out of retirement or off the practice squad to come and cover Travis Kelce in a playoff game. It just was very unfortunate that it turned out that way.
Yeah, I don't know how many linebacker 3s can come off and cover Travis Kelce, right? So
I would love to have still had linebacker 3. Linebacker 3 would have been great.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the defense really got dealt a bad injury hand last year. But hopefully that can stay the course this year, kind of get maybe some positive injury regression in the right way for the Buffalo Bills. I want to move over to the offensive side of the ball. Last year, Ken Dorsey was fired midway through the year, despite, I think, a lot of us feeling like he kind of got the bad side of turnover variance, and that's kind of the reason why he got fired. New offensive coordinator Joe Brady took over and is staying in that role in 2024. I'm just curious your thoughts on the switch at the time when they switched from Dorsey to Brady. How would you rate Brady's play calling last year? And then what do you expect to see differently this year now that he has a full offseason under his belt as the offensive coordinator?
So I don't think you can slice it any other way than Ken Dorsey was a scapegoat last year. He Now, that's to say from a results standpoint. Like, he still had a darn good offense. It was like a top 4 offense in EPA. I think they were top 2 in scoring. Lots of metrics. They were right up there at the top. However, when Josh Allen is your quarterback, Jason, I think you and I could probably go call an offense with Josh Allen. That'd be pretty good. Like, it'd be pretty good. Because he creates so much out of nothing that it's all relative as to what was there. So people close to it, and again, guys like myself and guys on our team who really break down the scheme, Eric Turner and Anthony Prohaska, who do our film room show, it was more the sequencing and the layering of the plays. There wasn't a lot of really sound logic in when he was, he would spam a certain play that was working, but he wouldn't set up other things off of it. So some of the results, in many people's opinion, it was maybe despite his play calling, not because of. So anytime there's a midseason coaching change, it's hard to know, okay, how much of that is Joe Brady just kind of working with what he has, and how much of that is him putting his, real fingerprints on the offense, because you can't reinstall a whole new offense in week 9. Like, that's just not ever going to be the way it works. So he did a nice job. Some metrics will show that it got worse, but the schedule also got way harder and the weather also got way worse. There was also a game against Dallas where we destroyed them and ran the ball 48 times against them. So a lot of the stats show, oh man, Joe Brady's a really run heavy coach. But well, yeah, we had a game where we ran the ball 48 times and threw the ball 14 because we destroyed the Cowboys. Like, yeah, like that makes it, in a small sample size, that skews it of what's there. If you pulled that game out, or if they had kept up offensively and we needed to pass more, I think it would show that he's still a very modern coach. And, all you need to do is look back. He coached the best offense in college football history, the Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase LSU offense, that was crazy pass heavy, but had some really good run mix and had, that awesome. He's the reason Clyde Edwards-Helaire ended up a first round pick. So I'm still eager to see where that goes and who he uses out of these new weapons.
Yeah, and I want to touch on these new weapons now. Great segue from you, because I mean, the Bills have like a glut of I don't want to say a glut of talent, but like a bunch of skill position players that I'm curious to see how they kind of maneuver them, right? They obviously moved on from Gabe Davis and traded Stephon Diggs in the offseason. They brought in Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They brought in Curtis Samuel. They drafted Keon Coleman. They also bring in Matt Collins. They also bring in Chase Claypool. And on top of that, they still have Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, and James Cook, who can kind of operate as a pass catcher as well. So my question to you is, when throwing the ball, what is this skill position grouping going to look like? I'm curious to see if they kind of run a offense similar to the Kansas City Chiefs last year, where they operate in like a pass catcher by committee. And I'm curious to see if that's what they do. And then also, just for like the fantasy heads out there, I'm curious your thoughts on Keon Coleman, if he's going to be an impact player in year 1, and what you kind of expect from him, who's already become kind of a star in the media.
So I would say, one, let me preface this by, there's no scenario where the team got better by not having Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. So I'm not going to try to make the argument that they're better, because Stephon Diggs is awesome and we didn't replace him in any material or meaningful sense. I will say there was a really significant drop-off last year after him, in the inconsistency of Gabe Davis, the emergence of Khalil Shakir, but not until much later in the season. They made an investment. They tried to do a signing in Deontay Hardy. That did not work out. They tried to bring Trent Sherfield over from Miami. That did not work out. We had a couple different guys try to come in off the practice squad. None of that really hit. So there was a huge drop off. So, obviously not having a elite receiver like Stephon Diggs up there at the top is going to be a huge, huge change. However, I do think you can make an argument there's a deeper collection of talent this year. So obviously we have that huge drop off. I think Curtis Samuel's in for a sneaky season. His best season as a pro was with Joe Brady as offensive coordinator in Carolina. That obviously is a signing that is not an accident, and was, he vouched for pulling him over here. If you want to have a guy to be curious about, a late career breakout, go look at the quarterbacks Curtis Samuel's caught the ball from in his career. It is a just murderer's row of terrible, terrible quarterbacks. And there's not a ton of precedent, but there's a few. Wes Welker didn't break out until his third team. Brandon Lloyd didn't break out until his fourth team. Robert Woods didn't break out until like year 8 of his career, and when he first played with an elite quarterback for the first time. So there's some precedent that we could see maybe a bit more. He's been very consistent, 600, 700 yards per season. He had a 1,000-yard scrimmage season with Joe Brady. There's a chance we see a little uptick there. Khalil Shakir, you can look at some metrics that he was literally number 1 in the NFL in some EPA and success rate stats. I think it would be naive to think that that's going to all of a sudden translate with much, much higher volume. But it gives me encouragement that 2 seasons of incredibly efficient production is going to at least translate to a good season. I think he's going to be a nice receiver. He's also, I think people think of him as like this little jitterbug slot receiver, like a Cole Beasley type. He's actually slightly bigger than Stephon Diggs. He's 6 foot 200 pounds. Like, he's not a little tiny guy. He's not big, but he's not like this little jitterbug guy. Like, he's a decent sized receiver. You then get into some of the other pieces. Keon Coleman has been obviously a very lovable guy. I'm trying to manage expectations. He's still a rookie. He's still a guy that I think could have a bigger red zone impact early on than maybe target hog standpoint. So you asked about fantasy. I think Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel are going to be better values from a fantasy standpoint because they're going to go way, way lower and will produce better, especially if like some best ball stuff. Keon Coleman, I would not touch outside of best ball because it's going to be awesome in the games where he does get touchdowns. But I think he's more of a 50, 60 catches kind of guy as a rookie. He's not going to be put in to be just funneled volume to. And then, you talk about that huge drop off last year. Now, Mac Hollins has had a nice season. He actually put up good numbers with the Raiders. He's been a special teams captain for 3 seasons. Marquez Valdez-Scantling's led the NFL in yards per catch twice in his career. And now coming in here, that's nice as a wide receiver 4 and wide receiver 5. They're legit, NFL players who can play and produce a little bit when you need them, where, maybe we do get 300-400 yards from those guys, whereas it was a nothing with the previous guys. And then we have our collection of former second round pick disappointments where you can pick from your grab bag of Andy Isabella, KJ Hamler, and Chase Claypool, all second round picks in the last 4 years, now trying to reclaim some semblance of a career here. So we'll see if any of them pan out. I don't really have high expectations. A sneaky name for a roster spot, I like Xavier Johnson out of Ohio State. Brian Hartline has a wide receiver factory down there, and that guy's been stuck behind some all-time wide receiver prospects. He's a stud on special teams, and he's the exact same scenario as when Terry McLaurin was coming out, a guy who was stuck behind some other super elite talent, great on special teams, might pan out as a better receiver in the pros than in college. He's a name to watch out for.
Okay, I love that. The tons of names to watch out for here on this Bills offense. And I mean, like, again, you can't really go wrong when your quarterback is Josh Allen, right? You kind of just trying to throw as many guys at the wall. Whoever sticks and whoever works with Allen will end up working out. Let's flip over to the kind of the expectations in 2024 for the Buffalo Bills. Currently over at Pinnacle, the Bills are listed with a 10.5 win total, juice towards the under, plus 185 to win their division, plus 700 to win the AFC Championship, and then also 13-1 to win the Super Bowl. You mentioned it a little bit earlier. We can't really say the Bills got better on paper. They probably got slightly worse on paper compared to previous years. But despite that, have no fear. They have Josh Allen. He is still here. So I'm curious your thoughts on this season, what the expectations are for the Buffalo Bills, one as a fan, and what you feel like the expectations are internally for the organization.
So what you just said is the key. They still have Josh Allen. And if you have Josh Allen and the other 3 teams in the division don't, you should be the favorite to win the division. I do think it's fair that they're not a minus odds favorite. I do think it's fair that Miami and the Jets, or the Jets and Miami, in whichever order you prefer, are pretty close. I do think the Patriots have a bit of a rebuild season here, but have a good defense and they're going to ruin a couple teams' seasons. I don't think they're going to do anything, but they're going to win some games that people aren't going to be happy with. So 10.5 is a really good number. I think I'd go slightly over. I do think they're like an 11-6 team. I would still bet on them to win the division because, again, they've done it 4 straight years. And if Josh Allen's healthy, I'm going to bet on the team that has Josh Allen to win the division. I'd be talking with my heart if I said I was betting on them to win the AFC Championship or to win the Super Bowl. But again, anytime you have Josh Allen, that's possible. And we talked earlier in the show about expectations and hot seats and where those things are at. It's easy to forget guys like I brought up Andy Reid. We talked about Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning still had an amazing career in the midst of the Tom Brady run and era. Peyton Manning didn't win his Super Bowl till age 30, and then won another one later and still had an amazing career. Patrick Mahomes is unbelievable. He's had the best first 6 seasons of any pro in NFL history, and is looking like an all-time great player. They're not going to win every single season. There was a 9-year stretch during the Brady Belichick run, which is the greatest dynasty in NFL history, where they didn't win the Super Bowl for 9 straight seasons. So I think the idea that it's this inevitability just isn't accurate. I do think that they'll have some changes coming up with, of the eventual end of Travis Kelce and Chris Jones and people like that. And then they'll have another renaissance, and Patrick Mahomes will lead another team to a championship later on. The key is just give me one in between there. Just give me one before I die. That's all I need. So I do think when you have a player like Josh Allen, I genuinely believe he's going to lead this team to a championship. And I think anything above there would be great, but I do think he's too good not to, and that he's going to win one here one of these years.
Yeah, the expectations are obviously very high for the team, but you mentioned it a little bit earlier. This might be a take your medicine year, but this also might be the year that the team surprises you, right? You never really know. The key is, again, like we said before, you have Josh
2
Allen.
years ago, that year was in Kansas City. It was the year they traded Tyreek Hill and made multiple other moves. And hey, this is kind of our, reload. It's not a rebuild, it's a reload. And then we'll be back in years to come. And they won back-to-back Super Bowls in that stretch. So, I think you can ask yourself, if you go back to like November, December of last year, nobody was picking Kansas City to win the Super Bowl. Everybody's like, oh man, this is the year it kind of came back to bite them, and they got hot at the right time. And that's all you need. You need to be healthy. You need to have health with your key players and get hot at the right time and have one of those guys who can make it possible. And the Bills have one of those guys.
Yeah, elite quarterback and health are the 2 pillars to win the Super Bowl. So let us know your thoughts on the 2024 Bills in the comment section down below. If you made it this far, that means you like our content. So please press that like button. It goes a long way for us. And if you enjoy this content and you're new here, hit that subscribe button. We're previewing all 32 NFL teams here on Forward Progress as we make our way towards training camp. So make sure you turn on notifications when you subscribe so you never miss out on our newest videos. If you're not into notifications, there should be a button on your screen somewhere top right of your screen where you can bookmark the playlist, and that way you will not miss out on any of our videos. Make sure you check out Greg over on X at Greg Tompsett. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. We'll catch you in the next one.